guys, I'm Shayla Shendro and welcome to my gluten-free baking and desserts channel. Some of you might already know me from my blog, What the Fork Food blog, which is a popular gluten-free baking and desserts blog. I also have a cookbook, the Gluten-Free Quick Breads cookbook, which a lot of you have already purchased and have been making quick breads out of, which is awesome. Today we're going to be baking a quick bread that's already on my website for the gluten-free baking challenge, which is a monthly challenge that I've been doing on my blog on and off for the last couple of years. The monthly gluten-free baking challenge changes every month. We pick a new recipe, and this month for January 2021 we're going to be baking a cranberry orange bread, which is really good and a great way to use up some of those leftover fresh cranberries that you might have from Christmas last month. Gluten-free quick breads are super easy to make. They only need a couple bowls, a couple tools, a whisk, a spatula, and a mixing spoon. You don't need a stand mixer, you don't need a hand mixer, and you definitely don't need a bread machine for this recipe. And if you like this recipe, check out my cookbook, the Gluten-Free Quick Breads cookbook. It's got 75 gluten-free quick breads that are all also dairy-free. They're all really good. There's a whole chapter on chocolate breads, seasonal breads, citrus breads. I'll link to it in the description below. You guys can click it, buy it, support me. Thank you. If you guys want more information about the gluten-free baking challenge and the different recipes every month, I'll link to the blog post link in the description below, and you can read how to enter the giveaway, the actual full recipe. The blog post contains information about the giveaway, the full recipe, extra tips and tricks about making this bread, and 2 alternative recipes if you don't have fresh cranberries, or if you don't want an orange bread, there's a cranberry banana bread. So check out the blog post to get the full recipe. You can print it out, you can enter the giveaway, you can read the extra tips and tricks for making this recipe, you can get the alternative recipe if you don't have fresh cranberries to use, and you can also go to my Facebook group, the Gluten-Free Baking Club, where you can take a picture and share the recipe that you've made in that group. I'll also link to that in the description below. Let's get baking. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do to get ready to bake our gluten-free cranberry orange quick bread is spray a 9x5 loaf pan with nonstick spray, and then I line mine with parchment paper just because I like to use the parchment paper as a sling to pull out the baked bread, just so it comes out a little bit easier. Gluten-free baked goods have a tendency to stick a little bit more than recipes made with regular all-purpose flour. Once we have our baking pan ready, we're going to put that aside. We're going to make sure our oven is preheated to 350 degrees. We want that nice and hot and ready to go as soon as our bread is mixed up. Now that our oven and our baking pan are all set, we're going to go ahead and start mixing up the dry ingredients. We're going to start with half a cup of granulated sugar, and we're going to add that to a large mixing bowl. And to that granulated sugar, we're going to add the zest of 1 orange. We're going to rub the zest into the sugar when we add this in, because it'll bring out the flavor of the orange and release the oil from the zest. You want to be careful to just get the orange part of the zest and not the white pith from the orange, because that will be bitter. I'm using a microplane. I love this for zesting citrus. I use it to grate Parmesan cheese. I use it to grate ginger. It's just a workhorse in my kitchen. I use it all the time. I'll link to the one below in the description that I use because I really, really love this. So now that we've got our zest in the sugar, we're going to use our clean hands and we're going to just kind of rub the zest right into the sugar. As I mentioned before, it will help release the natural oil from the zest, and it will bring out that orange flavor more in your quick bread. Now that we've got our sugar and our zest in the bowl, we're going to go ahead and add the rest of our dry ingredients. So we're going to add 2 cups of gluten-free flour, and this has xanthan gum in it that I already added. There's 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum in here. This flour blend is my own flour blend. It's on my website. I will link to that in the description below. My flour blend is made of white rice flour, brown rice flour, arrowroot, and tapioca flour. If you have a flour blend that already contains xanthan gum in it, do not add the xanthan gum called for in the recipe. Too much xanthan gum will make your bread gummy and give it a really gross texture. So we're gonna go ahead and add this flour. To the flour, we're going to add a teaspoon of baking powder. I use aluminum-free baking powder. We're gonna add half a teaspoon of baking soda. And we're gonna add half a teaspoon of fine sea salt. Then we're gonna go ahead and whisk this together until all of the ingredients are incorporated and combined. And to the dry ingredients, we're going to add the nuts. If you are nut-free, feel free to omit the nuts. I'm using walnuts today, but this recipe is also really good with pecans, and these are finely chopped. So this is a half a cup of walnuts. And the reason why we're going to add the walnuts to the dry ingredients is so that they get coated in flour and they will not sink to the bottom. The same for the cranberries. This is 1 cup of fresh cranberries that I've coarsely chopped. I like fresh cranberries in this recipe because it gives that burst of tartness. If you do not have fresh cranberries, you can use dried cranberries. I would soak those in 1/3 of a cup of orange juice before you add them. And I would mix that in at the end, fold it into the batter instead of putting it in with the dry ingredients. So again, this is 1 cup of coarsely chopped fresh cranberries. I'm using fresh and not frozen. You could use frozen too, but that will increase the baking time by about 20 to 30 minutes. So the cranberries are gonna go into the dry ingredients. They're gonna get coated in the flour, and that will keep the cranberries from sinking to the bottom of your bread when it's baking, and they'll be evenly distributed throughout the bread and it'll look really pretty. We're gonna go ahead and mix those in. All right, so now that we have our dry ingredients ready to go, we're gonna start mixing up our wet ingredients. We're gonna start by adding the brown sugar into the bowl, and this is half a cup of packed light brown sugar. I like to mix granulated sugar and brown sugar in my quick breads because it just gives it a really nice flavor. To the brown sugar, I'm gonna add 2 large eggs. To the eggs and sugar, I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of milk. Today I'm using 2/3 of a cup of unsweetened coconut milk. You could use regular milk instead, or you could use your favorite unsweetened dairy-free milk too. And to that, I'm gonna add 1/3 of a cup of oil. I'm using avocado oil. To this, we're gonna add the vanilla extract, and we're also gonna add some orange extract. I just want to make sure because I got vinegar. I didn't know which one was which until I smell it. So that was 1 teaspoon of orange extract. I like to use the orange extract to bring out a little bit of extra orange flavor, and that was pure orange extract. And to this, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vinegar. The vinegar acts almost like buttermilk when added to the milk. It adds tenderness to the baked goods. I'm gonna whisk this together until everything is really incorporated. I wanna make sure those eggs are broken up and broken down. I wanna make sure there's no big lumps left from my brown sugar. Another thing I should mention is that you want your ingredients to be room temperature. When your ingredients are room temperature, when you're making a quick bread, the quick bread will cook evenly and it will rise better too. So I'm going to mix the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. So we're gonna mix this. We wanna make sure all the flour is moistened. We don't want any dry stuff left over. Make sure you're scraping the bottom of the bowl. What I'm doing when I mix is I scrape the bowl more with a spoon than I'm actually mixing the batter to make sure I'm getting everything off the sides and off of the bottom of the bowl. And then I just kind of fold it up and in, just kind of check, and everything is moistened, so we don't need to keep mixing. One thing you want to look for is on the cranberries and nuts and see if there's any chunks of dried flour on them, because sometimes with the chopped cranberries, chunks of dried flour will get caught in them. Just give it a little tap with your spoon and get it a little bit moist. so that when you bake it and slice into it, you won't have any dry chunks of flour while you're slicing in those cranberries, because that won't look as appealing. I'm going to transfer this batter into my prepared baking sheet. Go ahead, smooth out the top just a little bit. And now we are going to bake this bread at 350 degrees for 55 to 60 minutes. If you use frozen cranberries, this bread might take as long as an hour and 20 minutes, possibly a little bit longer depending on the temperature of your oven. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in the oven, and then I'm going to show you the inside of a bread that I have already baked yesterday. All right, so we've got our finished baked bread right here, ready to go, ready to slice into. This bread is completely cooled. I cooled it in the pan for 20 minutes before I removed it, and then I removed it from the pan and cooled it completely on a wire rack. It's very important to cool your gluten-free quick breads all the way before you cut into it. If you cut into it when it's still warm, it will start to crumble. It needs to cool to solidify that structure. So I'm going to cut into this bread. You can see this bread has the cranberries distributed throughout. They didn't all sink to the bottom because we stirred it into the flour, and the texture of this bread is excellent. It's slightly dense, but not super dense. It's still airy. It's still got those air bubbles in it. It's still light. It's almost similar to a cake texture. We're gonna go ahead and try this. Not good. The cranberries are tart. The bread is slightly sweet. You can taste those walnuts. You can taste that orange zest in there. This bread is fantastic. Really, really good. You guys are gonna love it. If you guys love this recipe, please like this video, subscribe on the button below. And also in the description, go to the full recipe on my website. You can print it out, you can save it for later. You can also get all the information for the January gluten-free baking challenge. That's also linked below. Please read that post. It will give you more tips and tricks to making this recipe. It will tell you how to enter the giveaway associated with this monthly baking challenge. And you can also get the link to my gluten-free quick breads cookbook, where you can make 75 more gluten-free, dairy-free quick breads that are all fantastic. Follow along for all of our monthly gluten-free baking challenges. They will be released on the 1st of every month this year. Each month we will be baking a new recipe. Again, today's recipe for January's gluten-free baking challenge is a gluten-free cranberry orange quick bread. Next month, something different. The month after that, something different again. So subscribe. See ya. The other one. Blah 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Wait, my hair's on the opposite side. How's my hair look?
Good.
Blah 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 blah. What was that that just fell? I still got bread in my teeth. I feel like this is like verbal garbage.